welcome back. Thanks for tuning in and for subscribing. Today I'm going to talk about the generator. We're going to start out with figuring out exactly how big of a generator I needed, what I had to do to go through that, and it's pretty basic. I just needed to find out what wattage I needed. And in order to figure out the wattage I needed to figure out how many amps each piece of equipment pulls when it's running. So I did that just by doing some research online or looking at a label on the back of the power supply for that piece of equipment if it had one, and then just totaled them all up. And so I ended up with a 48.21 total amperage draw, and now I have to convert that to wattage. It's simple formula. It's amperage times voltage equals wattage. I know everything is running on 110, so we take the 48.21 and multiply it by 110, and we end up with 5,303.1 watts. Now I want to make sure that I have a generator big enough to support that on a continuous basis, but I also want to have something a little bit bigger than that. I don't want to just top out right there, because there's a couple of 5,500 watt generators out there, but I wanted to have a little bit of headroom in case I wanted to upgrade in the future, add another circuit, do whatever. So I decided on the Furman generator. The model number is a T07571. I like the specs on it. It's 7,500 continuous watts and a peak of 9,400. So with the 7,500 watts, and I only need about 5,300, I'm at about 2,200 extra watts of capability there, which works out to another 20 amp circuit basically, or another 20 amps of usage that I in theory could use. So that'll be nice for an upgrade. As I mentioned in my last video, when I found this generator from a friend of mine, he told me about it. I realized it was $14.99 on their website. It was a little expensive. He told me about Costco. Looked at Costco, it was $9.99. Then I also saw that if you buy it in store, it might be cheaper, and it was $8.99. So I bought it. So I'm very happy with the purchase. There was a very slight misleading spec between Costco and the manufacturer website, where the manufacturer, I believe, said it was only 74 decibels loud, and Costco said it was 72 decibels loud. 72 would be great, 74 wouldn't be too bad, but when I fired it up when I first bought it, I could tell it was considerably louder. So after doing a little research and also talking to my buddy, he said that apparently when they rate generators, they're rating them for their volume, for the decibel reading, from 23 feet away or 7 meters away. So I was like, okay, well, that kind of makes sense, because they tell you to have the generator, 20 foot from your house or your campsite or whatever, for exhaust and that kind of reasons. But I don't have the capability. It's going to be literally right outside the trailer wall. It will be in the open air, but it will be just right outside the trailer. So I wanted to take some readings and find out exactly what we're looking at as far as volume, what it sounds like in the trailer. So I set up a tape measure, got a decibel meter, put it on a tripod, put my phone on it and videoed it, and yeah, it was considerably louder. Now, a lot of things could go into determining why it was louder. Part of it is probably because when they do the test, they probably do it in an open field where it's sitting on grass or dirt. I'm sitting on a hard concrete driveway. It's also sitting directly next to the trailer, which is another reflective surface. So, or inside the trailer, because of the positioning where the generator is at and where I would be sitting at, it's still pretty loud. So we're gonna see if we can't do some baffling to adjust it. And I did just that. Some pieces of plywood, just laid it, like a 30 to 45 degree angle against the generator, so it still had plenty of breathing room. And if I had the boards angled just right and pushing the sound towards the front of the trailer or away from where I'll be sitting in the trailer, I was able to get it down to, 72.5 dB, which is much more tolerable. It might be a little bit less once it's actually on the rollout that I'm going to be building, because it'll be up in the air, so it won't have the hard concrete directly underneath of it. Maybe more room for the sound to escape before it gets to me. I don't know. We'll have to determine that. So that about wraps up this week's video. Next week we're going to get into we're going to get into talking about the rollout, and I've spent 2 full days probably, plus a lot of nights just kind of sitting up thinking how to design this rollout, because nobody makes one big enough for this generator. There's several that you can get from RV parts places that, you know, to go underneath an RV, and it's a tray and it just rolls out and it can support, you know, 200, 400, 500 pound, whatever it is. But they're typically not wide enough. And if it is wide enough, then it's way too deep. I found one that was wide enough, but it ended up being like 60 inches long. And that's, I mean, I don't need anything that's 5 feet long. That would just eat up so much internal trailer space when it's inside the trailer. So talking with a friend of mine at work, we kind of came up with a game plan. So I sat down in CAD, designed some things that I think are going to work, found some readily available parts, sealed bearings, some tracks that I'm going to have to heavily modify to allow it to work the way I need it to work. But we'll get into that next week. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.